United States prides itself on being a nation of immigrants. And yet today, our policies and public discourse present immigrants as one of the greatest threats to our society.
There have been 4 high-profile arrests involving a suspected illegal in the state of Massachusetts.
Adam, a very touchy subject here on Beacon Hill and in Massachusetts, the issue of illegal aliens here in this state.
Immigrants are labeled illegals and categorized as criminals. Being somehow less human than U.S. citizens means that they are entitled to fewer basic rights and can be exploited for cheap labor. Being somehow criminal means fathers and mothers can be split from their children and deported from the country for the lack of a piece of paper. Being undocumented means that children raised in this country can be denied the opportunity for higher education. While the story of European immigrants is well known and celebrated in U.S. culture, our understanding of why Latino immigrants have come to this country in the past 30 years has been less discussed. Our globalized economic system promotes free trade agreements that provide benefits for corporations, but increases poverty in Latin America, which forces people to migrate.
El sistema económico en nuestros países lo que genera es de que las personas que tienen recursos económicos sigan creciendo más y en contraste la gente que no tiene, ¿verdad? No tiene las oportunidades de poder vivir de una manera decente.
The effects of these economic and political systems have been felt in Central America for many years. In the tumult of the 1970s and 80s, the long-standing U.S. policy of intervention in Central America fed violence, instability, and repression.
But in spite of, or maybe because of, a flurry of stories about places like Nicaragua and El Salvador, and yes, some concerted propaganda, many of us find it hard to believe we have a stake in problems involving those countries. Too many have thought of Central America as just that place way down below Mexico that can't possibly constitute a threat to our well-being.
Ultimately, the policy fed immigration to the U.S. as well. Waves of Central American immigrants came to the Boston area as a result of these forces. In 1981, members of the faith and legal communities in Cambridge, Massachusetts, joined with asylum seekers from El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala to found Centro Presente.
The U.S. intervention in Central America was really a big concern of ours. And the fact that it was not only unfair and killing people in Central America with our tax dollars, but obviously for some people it was driving them out of the country. In fact, our church was also a sanctuary church for a woman from El Salvador who had been doing union organizing, and her family basically made her leave after she had been abducted 3 different times, raped, tortured. They just said, they'll kill you the next time. You have to leave.
Initially a place for migrants to find solidarity in their struggle to be recognized as refugees of civil conflicts fueled by U.S. foreign policy, Centro Presente quickly became a center of community for these newcomers to the U.S. Over the years, Centro Presente served as a space where Latino immigrants could talk about their experiences, to discuss and learn more about the forces that caused them to leave their home countries, and most importantly, a vehicle through which they could make their voices heard and work for systemic change.
It's been wonderful over the last 10 years or so to see the shift made in the organization to not drop the service part, not drop the helping people with their immediate problems, but to add the notion of advocacy and membership, and to get people who are involved to say, this is my organization, and these are my issues, and we're going to join together in struggling over them.
Centro Presente's mission is to educate, organize, and empower the immigrant community to advocate for itself and to transform how this society views and treats immigrants.
¿Cuánto tiempo tiene acá?
Rather than just providing services, Centro Presente provides a space where Latino immigrants can be active participants and leaders of a movement to demand respect for their rights as contributors to this country.
A lot of the workers are here tonight. Recently, they have decided to host public actions to denounce all the abuses and exploitation.
A critical aspect of our mission is that our members are involved in all levels of decision-making in our organization through participation in committees and serving on our board of directors.
Para mí es bastante importante que los jóvenes formen parte de la junta directiva. Primero estamos haciendo contar nuestra voz y también estamos dándole ejemplo a los demás jóvenes que están afuera.
Ser parte de la junta directiva es algo muy importante, emocionante. No tienen que haber solo adultos en una junta directiva, pueden haber jóvenes, porque los jóvenes tenemos muchas ideas que tenemos que compartir con los demás, que los demás tienen que escuchar, porque los jóvenes no son el futuro, son el presente también.
Since our beginning, Centro Presente has guided immigrants through the U.S. immigration system. But more than filling out papers, we have also educated our members as to their rights as immigrants in this country. Armed with a better understanding of their rights, our members are then organized to advocate for better immigration policies and better treatment of their families by the government and the society at large.
¿Debemos unirnos para seguir luchando o debemos dejar que nos pisoteen como siempre lo han hecho?
Ser parte del grupo de jóvenes de Centro Presente es algo muy importante, inspiracional, porque conozco a muchos más jóvenes que son como yo, que tal vez tienen muchos aspectos en la historia de ellos igual a la mía, y he aprendido sobre mis derechos con el grupo de jóvenes y aprendí que no debo de tener miedo. Aprendí todo lo que tengo que hacer cuando inmigración llega a la casa de uno.
Immigrants are drawn to the U.S. in search of work, but often find themselves impacted by the same economic dynamic that forced them out of their own countries. Our members frequently experience wage theft and labor abuse.
Los trabajadores están sufriendo mucho porque hay demasiado calor, los están explotando, quieren producción, quieren que trabajen más de lo que pueden dar.
And not being aware of labor laws, think that there is nothing they can do. Our Workers' Rights Area educates our members about their rights as workers, empowers them to fight back, and to reach out in solidarity to other workers in their struggles.
Creo que el trabajo de Centro Presente tiene un impacto positivo en la comunidad, especialmente ahora que hay muchos trabajadores que son explotados con solo el hecho de ser indocumentados. Cuando vienen a Centro Presente, conocen sus derechos y aprenden a defenderlos colectivamente.
As more and more of our members become citizens, we encourage them to be actively engaged in the civic life of their communities. It is critical that the immigrant community makes their concerns known to their elected officials. But for Centro Presente, civic engagement means more than mobilizing those who are eligible to vote. As many of our members are still unable to vote, we are exploring what it means for immigrants to be actively involved in the civic life of their community.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
The future of this country will in large part be dependent on the future of Latino immigrants and their children. It will be dependent on the education, civic participation, and labor of mothers, fathers, children, and the generations to come. At Centro Presente, we seek not a path of assimilation, but of transformation.
El trabajo de Centro Presente es un trabajo que no se queda simplemente en conquistar una reforma migratoria positiva para los inmigrantes, sino un trabajo que conlleve a crear una sociedad justa donde la gente pueda vivir con con respeto y dignidad.
Latino immigrants will surely come to learn English and adapt to their new country as immigrants before them have. But we also seek to empower the immigrant community to transform their adopted homeland, to overcome systemic oppression, racism, and injustices.
Es importante que la comunidad latinoamericana se organice para defender sus derechos en los Estados Unidos, porque cuando estamos unidos podemos lograr lo que queremos, podemos llegar más allá de la meta que tal vez nos pongamos.
Together with our members, we put into action our values of unity, power, and justice. Together, we are creating leaders with the values, understanding, and vision to change not only their future, but the future of us all by building a more just society.
No somos uno, no somos 10, somos millones, cuéntanos bien.